This review is late. Why? Because I bought the PC version. Go figure that I'd have to wait a whole extra 2 excruciating weeks just to enjoy this game. But hey, at least I got a free copy of Sonic 1 on Steam, right? Thanks, Sega? Late or no, Sonic Mania is easily in the running for the best classic Sonic game of all time. In this review, we'll go over the good, the bad, and the ugly of Sonic Mania. What separates Sonic Mania from more recent Sonic game? It's the fact that it was developed with love by fans of the classic games, by people that truly cared about Sonic the Hedgehog as a series. Individuals like Christian Whitehead and Simon Tomley brought one thing to classic Sonic that the series has been missing for quite some time: accuracy. There's a certain flow to the classic Sonic games that was lost after Sonic & Knuckles, and it took die-hard fans of the original series to capture it again. There are numerous videos that delve into the past and accomplishments of creators like Christian Whitehead, T. Lopez, and other talents behind the game much better than I ever could, but having some context helps illuminate the reasons why Sonic Mania is such a spectacular game. There's quite a bit to talk about here that makes Sonic Mania a good game. For starters, as mentioned before, the flow of the game more perfectly emulates the better classic Sonic games like Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and Sonic & Knuckles. There's usually long periods of speed with smaller platforming segments to slow the game down. These are usually short and can be quickly traversed. There's a sense of progression to many of the stages in Mania that makes gameplay satisfying. Most acts retain these aspects. Some struggle a bit more, or feel more claustrophobic than the others. Sonic Mania consists of 12 zones, each with 2 acts. In typical Sonic fashion, there's a hidden zone at the end for thorough players that have obtained all 7 Chaos Emeralds. In addition to the special stages required to obtain the 7 Chaos Emeralds that can be accessed by giant rings, there's also blue sphere levels that harken back to Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. Though you can't obtain Chaos Emeralds with blue sphere levels, finishing them gradually unlocks goodies for you. The special stages, which refer back more heavily to Sonic CD special stages, are amazing and are a huge improvement over the aforementioned game's special stages. As opposed to Sonic CD special stages, the special stages here in Sonic Mania are clearly more refined and more well thought out. One of the biggest concerns that I had with Sonic Mania as I initially learned about it was that the zones would all simply be rehashes of old Sonic zones. Luckily, there's a nice mixture of new and old, giving plenty of nostalgia to old school Sonic fans while still offering some brand new challenges. What makes these zones so special is that the first act of each classic zone emulates the first act of the zones in the originating game almost perfectly. If you're familiar with the layout of some of these zones' first acts, you'll find yourself rushing through them fairly quickly with a nice dose of nostalgia. The second act of these classic zones are completely brand spanking new. Some of them have cool gimmicks that make traversing the act different and enjoyable, while others have gimmicks that are a bit lackluster. One thing worth noting is that many of these zones, especially the classic zones, have bosses that usually don't have too much to do with their originating zone. This is mostly acceptable because the bosses range from fun to shrug-worthy, but many of them have throwbacks or obscure references that might actually fly over the heads of all but the most devoted of Sonic fans, or may even be completely looked over as just a little quirk to the level itself. However, having the Death Egg robot as the Act 2 boss of Green Hill Zone is a head-scratcher. It would have made more sense to have him as a boss of Emerald Hill Zone, which I think would have been a more welcome addition, as Green Hill Zone has been rehashed, referenced, or recreated more times than I have fingers on both hands. It's a minor gripe, but it's definitely nice to have a shot at the Death Egg robot without dying for every misstep. And look at you, Sonic 2. Speaking of bosses, several of them are unique and enjoyable to fight against. Others aren't really bosses, but are more fun diversions, welcome changes to the norm. Of course, it wouldn't be a Sonic game without an amazing soundtrack. Every single track in this game fits where it is in the game like a glove, and it's an impressive feat to say the least. Every track is energetic when it suits the zone, or more subdued if it's required from the zone. In fact, I could argue that Sonic Mania's soundtrack is its strongest point. I haven't been disappointed at all with any of the music in the game, and I can't remember a Sonic game, or any game for that matter, where I enjoyed every single track. This game has quite a bit of variety that helps bump up its replay value. Even with 24 stages total, it's a bit short. You can complete the game casually in about 2 to 2.5 hours if you avoid giant rings and blue sphere minigames. Running through the game once while playing blue sphere and actively seeking out giant rings for Chaos Emeralds, it took me about 5 hours or so. There's so many bonus gates and stages, which only need 25 rings to activate, that you can spend a good 20 or 30 minutes just in Green Hill Zone if you're thorough enough. Unfortunately, there's only 2 giant rings per act, so losing in their special stages hurts a lot more compared to losing in blue spheres. Speaking of the giant rings, many of these are hidden in a way that reward exploration. Many more wind up hidden in places you wouldn't typically wind up finding without playing legitimately poorly. Several of these giant rings can be spotted as you traverse zones. Once you spot them, a little poking around will usually find you the path to them. It's pretty rare to walk right into a giant ring while walking through stages normally, but Green Hill Zone has one that you may inevitably walk right into. I assume it was put there so the developers could let new players know about their existence. Finally, the game adds even more to replay value by giving you options, such as playing as Sonic and Tails, Sonic alone, Tails alone, or Knuckles alone. Later on, you'll unlock a feature referred to as "and Knuckles," which allows you to have an AI-controlled Knuckles as a partner no matter who you choose to play this game with. This makes for some entertaining combinations, as you don't typically expect to see Tails and Knuckles exploring together. Play the game as Knuckles with this mode on for extra chuckles. While Sonic Mania has many strengths as a classic Sonic game, it also has a few weaknesses that unfortunately hold it back from perfection. For example, many stages are so busy that it's easy to miss enemies if you're not paying close attention. A number of stages also have what I call phantom platforms, or phantom objects. Platforms that don't seem like they should allow your character to stand on them, yet do, or objects that seem like they should allow your character to stand on them or might seem to present an obstacle, but don't. During casual playthroughs, this can make for some extremely confusing gameplay that may, from time to time, break the flow of the game or make you attempt to surmount an obstacle that isn't actually there, which puts you right into the way of danger you could have avoided otherwise. Some of the zones, or at least specific acts, can be very sluggish or boring, which really bring the game to a screeching halt. The first act of Mirage Saloon Zone and its boss are perfect examples of this. Other zones, like Metallic Madness Zone and Titan Monarch Zone, are sluggish and oftentimes confusing messes that make you practically beg for the game to be over. Luckily, you only have to suffer a bit longer by that point, so at least the worst zones of the game are toward the end. Another zone notorious for slowing the game down is Hydro City Zone, with its Act 2 bubble prisons and inexplicable boats. A huge party foul can be found in Press Garden Zone Act 2, and many spots, unless you have the Flame Shield. The game will freeze you and steal your controls away from you. In some cases, you're forced to stay frozen and let the game basically play itself as you take down obstacles that are in your way that you normally couldn't take down without the Flame Shield. The developers seem to have forgotten one of the most important rules of platforming. Don't remove control from the player unless you absolutely need to. This is a glaring flaw in an otherwise great zone. As a brief aside, there are a few things that I felt were missed opportunities. For example, Super Tails not having his flickies, and an odd lack of animations for super forms at the end of each act. The game simply kicks you out of your super form instead, so it can play the proper animations. Would it have killed the development team to create some unique animations for the super forms at least? One of the biggest issues I had with the game were the bosses. Many of them, like Death Egg Robot, Weather Globe, or the Act 2 boss of Chemical Plant Zone, were nostalgic enough, fun enough, or unique and unexpected enough that they were enjoyable and I had fun against them. Many others were tedious or oddly lacking in imagination or creativity. Take for example the Heavy Gunner boss, a boss in Studiopolis Zone Act 1. As you can see, the missiles it fires consists of 2 kinds, red and blue. You can roll or attack the blue missiles to send them back at the enemy, and that's how you beat the boss. You only need to do this a handful of times. The boss stretches on for so long that you'll inevitably get bored with it. It's not that the boss is difficult, just tedious. Which brings me to another point. The bosses just aren't difficult. Many of them are so easy to beat that they only require an aggressive offensive. You'll lose all your rings, but if you don't care about that, you can breeze through most of the bosses the game has to offer. Other bosses that might be a challenge are essentially neutered completely if you arrive at the end of an act with the appropriate elemental shield. For example, the Thunder Shield's extra jump allows you to hit bosses that are normally too high for you to hit without abusing a gimmick or aspect of the boss that lets you reach them. This makes some bosses laughably easy when they were already simply another obstacle. I can only imagine such a thing was intentional, but the ratio of fun, unique, or nostalgic bosses to boring, tedious, simple, or uncreative bosses is extremely unbalanced and, honestly, one of the biggest chinks in Sonic Mania's armor. While Sonic Mania's bad boss problem is one of its worst issues, the biggest issue with the game isn't there. It's Blue Spheres. This may be personal bias, but Blue Spheres is the worst of the special stages by a long shot. In this case, Blue Spheres is the worst of what can already be considered bad special stages in classic Sonic games, and that says something. It takes a special kind of bad to beat out the likes of Sonic CD's open area UFO chases or Sonic 1's spinning, nauseating, seizure-inducing special stages, but Blue Spheres accomplishes it. It induces the worst kind of motion sickness, and the sound the Blue Spheres make are like taking a cheese grater to your eardrums. All of this wouldn't be so bad if not for two very important problems. Many of Sonic Mania's more notable, worthwhile rewards are locked behind the Blue Spheres minigame, and all of the normal Blue Sphere stages are, so far as I can tell, simply recreations of the stages from Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. I'd imagine actually planning out some 20 plus Blue Sphere stages would be timely, but it's a notably lazy and poor addition, and locking the game's more enjoyable secrets behind their completion is a huge problem. These stages aren't simple or easy, and it'll probably take several playthroughs just to beat them all. Worse, if you want to go for 100% completion, the game requires you to collect every ring present in each Blue Sphere stage before finishing it. Failing to do so only earns you the normal medal for the stage. Accomplishing this Herculean task on any Blue Sphere stage earns you a gold medal. At least in Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, the game only demanded you beat them. Collecting rings just weren't necessary. I'd like to close out this review by mentioning that no game is perfect. There never has been, and never will be, a game that is perfect from beginning to end. This stems largely from the fact that perfection is subjective. What's a masterpiece to me may be what another person considers to be trash. Having said that, I think that even with its most glaring flaws, Sonic Mania is as close to a masterpiece as a classic Sonic game will get. Or, if we compare Sonic Mania to the rest of the classic Sonic games, it's at the very least on par with Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and Sonic & Knuckles, which are what I consider to be the best of the classic series. This is a pretty tall order, since every crack Sega has ever taken at classic Sonic to try to capture the glory days has inevitably failed. Sonic 4, both of its misguided episodes, are excellent examples of the sort of failure that I'm talking about. Even more critically praised games like Sonic Generations ultimately failed to capture what made classic Sonic great. Sonic Mania, however, gets it pretty close to perfect and sets the bar for future Sonic games. If you're a fan of Sonic games, this is absolutely 100% worth the price tag currently attached to it. Well, that's the end of the review. You can click away now. Or if you want more Chunky Beef, or want to be informed when we stream, be sure to subscribe to my channel here on YouTube, follow me on Twitch, or on Twitter or Minds. I appreciate all of your support. Thanks very much.